Hello, my name is Dr. Osunde. I'm the superintendent of schools here in Stratford, Connecticut. Last year, we had a lot of conversations as a community and as a school system about some of the goals we want to see happen for our children, some of the improvement needs that we earmarked. We have an incredibly hardworking professional staff, and I'm happy to share with you that we have seen some remarkable things happen with our students. Our students, your children, are finally starting to show us what they're capable of. So please join us as we go through a presentation on last year's academic performance.
Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Dr. Daniels, Assistant Superintendent of Schools, and I'm going to start us off with a discussion around our performance data from the 22-23 school year. As Dr. Osunde shared, we have a lot of positive growth that has taken place over the past year. We also have areas of growth that we plan to work on throughout this next school year with specific strategies, and we're going to walk through those moments here today. On our slide here is my strategic operating plan priorities, our strategic priority plan. And I want to start by kind of telling us what got us here. So there were a group of parents, community stakeholders, administrators, teachers who got together to identify what are the key areas in which we need to focus on to improve student learning outcomes. There was a theory of action that was designed, and within our theory of action, you will find in the strategic operating plan that it was our focus specifically to respond to the achievement and the gap needs of all students, inclusive of access to quality learning, opportunities with the appropriate supports, customized to student need. Then all students will learn, perform, and achieve at a high standard and thereby acquire the SPS Portrait of a Graduate attribute, adequately preparing them to respond to the rigors and outcomes of post-secondary transition. With this theory in mind, we knew that we had to make dramatic improvements in student outcomes in a short period of time. And so we spent our 22-23 school year supporting our principals specifically and how to familiarize themselves with yielding prompt and quick results for our student learning. If you look here, I'm just gonna click here, some educational practices that our schools focused on specifically. The first was prioritizing academic data to inform decision-making. We took an intensive focus on our school improvement plan to ensure that our students were our priority, that we use data to inform our practices. We also engaged in professional learning communities that were about teaching and learning and ensuring that we were using data to guide instruction. And in addition to that, we worked on cross-strategy collaboration. An example of that was our code of conduct. Principals got together, students got together, parents, community, board members got together to create that code of conduct. So there was this cross-strategy collaboration, not only for our code of conduct, but other areas of our work. And then lastly, it was critical to monitor for support. As our principals and our teachers engaged in the deep work of using data to inform instruction, it was critical that we supported our leaders and supported our teacher with the PD necessary to develop their practice so that they were able to apply formative assessments and identify areas of growth. So in summary, we started with, again, the strategic operating plan, our strategic operating plan. And in that plan, we identified a theory of action and began to focus on these educational practices, which has yielded us the growth that we are going to present today. So at this time, I'm going to start us off with Mr. Traverso, our newest addition to the team, who's going to talk a little bit about the district data overview and the growth made there.
Oops. There we go. Good evening, everyone. Tonight we will have data presented. But before we begin to examine the data, I would like to identify that our strategic operating plan of the district is actually the conceptual framework that offers a rationale for both data collection and analyses and reflection and systemic responses. Tonight, when we met as a team multiple times in preparing for the preparation, Dr. Asunde's constant message to us and his objective was for us to tell the whole story for both data collection, analyses, reflection, and systemic responses, but in the areas of challenges and growth areas and strengths. He wanted the entire story of Stratford and what Stratford was doing to be presented. The good work as well as the work we have ahead of us. These slides and discussions should prove clarity of the intentionality of the work that we're doing in terms of understanding the framework, the areas of growth, the performance metrics by which we're measured, whether it's individually as a school or collectively as a district, and our potential as a district. But as with any organizational plan, and Dr. Daniels had responded to this, referred to this earlier, our initial step is to build a theory of action. That serves as our roadmap as we navigate through the challenges and complexities of competing priorities and sometimes possible distractions. The theory of action identifies 3 key areas. One is, and their questions, where are we? The second is, where do we want to be? And the third, how are we going to get there? So collecting data is part of the process, but our effective response to the findings is a critical step in helping us succeed. A third part is providing tools, resources, professional learning, and supports that are all key contributors to ensuring a continuation of the growth process. We will see through this process, and it happens organically, is the evolution of 3 organizational characteristics. The first being a conceptual base, and this ensures that the district priorities are not just working, but are actually thriving. And if they're thriving, our children are thriving. The second, a culture of inquiry, where progress monitoring takes place. This is where we all operate as reflective practitioners in improving our practice, making certain that all of our work is aligned in an effective manner. And third is the most important one, and this is about collective responsibility. This is so that everyone can focus on children, and we jointly embrace the needs of our Stratford children and families. And this is not just a North Star shining on student performance data. This serves, more importantly, as a compass for us to ensure that every Stratford family and every child in Stratford has a life-changing educational experience. It's incumbent upon us to ensure that this happens. So let's set the stage by examining the first step that I talked about earlier in my in my presentation. Where are we? How is our performance measured? And in comparison to who or what? And how have we been categorized historically? This table refers to the performance in terms of our district in comparison to other districts or surrounding districts in regards to ELA, math, and science. It's broken out into 3 years, pre-pandemic and 2 years of post-pandemic. What is a performance index? The performance index is a rubric that the state uses to measure our productivity, our effectiveness as a school district. Again, it could be categorically categorized as individual schools or as a district. So let's take a look. So this slide compares us to the surrounding towns of Stratford. We have Trumbull doing exceptional work, Shelton, Milford, we're and then Stratford, and then Bridgeport. So if we look at that, there's a significant difference between Stratford's performance and Trumbull's performance, but there's not a significant difference that we can't move up. We can look at this as, oh God, what are we doing? Or we can look at this as, thank God, we collected the data to determine what we were doing. So if we take a look at this, we can see that with just a little bit of effort, we can move ourselves up. This doesn't mean that we answer to that as where we are or who we are. We answer to this as where we want to be as a district. The second slide is another performance index comparison. Now, if you see these towns, you'll see that we're compared to Bristol, Hamden, Stratford, and Manchester. What this is, and it says district reference group, this is something that was stopped in the early 2000s. It is biased, but the state used it as a mechanism to group cities for decades. And how it is it groups districts and towns based on their socioeconomic status. Obviously, it started with the wealthy and it worked down, and the state had 9 different DIRGs, or district reference groups. We were number 7, and there were 17 other schools, districts within that group of that DIRG. So if we look at this, I took out of the 17 schools, we took out, I should say, the 3 other districts that had similar student population numbers to Stratford. And with that, we can take a look at this and say, my God, it's only a few percentage points will make the difference here. We can be the top performing district in this group of other schools that are comparable student population numbers. It won't take much work. And again, this is not what we answer to in terms of where we are, but this is how we answer to where we want to be. And again, this is a collective responsibility for all of us to understand the framework and recognize the direction that we have to go in and align all of our practices. This can be construed as disconcerting. This is, again, chronic absenteeism is one of the indexes that the state uses to measure our performance as a district. So if we look at the surrounding towns, Trumbull, Shelton, Milford, Stratford, and Bridgeport, and in this slide we actually put in the state of Connecticut as in another a comparative entity, we can see that we really have a lot of work to do in chronic absenteeism. No school district from pre-pandemic has met that standard that they had prior to the pandemic now, but many of the districts are moving in the right direction. Now, this certainly doesn't tell us that at the boundaries or the city limits, our kids just decide on the other side of the city limits that kids aren't going to go to school. This means this has to do with what message we're providing to all the families, how we're engaging all the students, and the effort that every single school in our district and every single person in our district, what we have to do collectively to improve in this measure. If we look at that 28.4%, think about that. If we cut that in half, how many more students will be in front of teachers every single day in every classroom? This is not what we answer to, but this tells us where we have to go. This also doesn't tell us the full story about all the good things that are happening in schools. I want to let you know, Eli Whitney and Rob Vitteri's staff, they deserve a round of applause because their chronic absenteeism rate was around 10%. How about a round of applause for Eli Whitney? You know, I met with Rob the other day, and he talked about his investment, his staff's investment in terms of the families and the students in the school. That personalized treatment makes such a distinct difference in terms of how families respond to their children going to schools. And that's what we want to replicate throughout the entire district. If we look at, this is again a comparison to the three other towns in the state of Connecticut regarding Bristol, Hamden, Manchester, and the state of Connecticut. Again, it's an indication that we haven't moved in the right direction. But again, I want to say thank goodness we collected this data, so now we can make a concerted efforts in making sure that our work aligns to improving our absenteeism rates in this district. I'll let you take a moment to digest that. At this time, I would like to introduce Sue Schmidt, and she's going to, and Rob Viteri, and Diana Diorio, and Dan Hicks. I can't believe I got all your names right. In terms of the next section of the presentation.
I would like to thank this team tonight for coming together to present this data. The principals, Dr. Diorio, Dan Hicks, Rob Viteri, are each going to present on the data from our SBAC elementary schools. Some of the actions we have taken since 2021 has included the science of reading training. We've added additional decodable books in our classrooms, K-3 classrooms for our students and teachers. We have focused on intervention, having our reading teachers and math coaches in the classroom working with teachers and students. We have added iReady Math and Reading, hired school climate specialists so principals could be in the classrooms as well as facilitate data team meetings. We've also added additional social workers in some of the buildings to work with students so that students could be in the classrooms. So, how do we know that these actions were effective?
Thanks. So we're confident that the systems that we put in place have led to some of these outcomes that we see on our elementary SBAC trends. As we look at all 4 grade levels, 3 through 6, we note an upward trend in proficiency levels over the past 3 post-pandemic years. We're encouraged that our work with the science of reading will fortify foundational reading skills for our children in K-2 that will then translate into a continuation of these upward trends and these outcomes on future assessments for those grades 3 through 6 students moving forward.
Thank you. And similarly to reading, we have an upward trend in our math data, and that is our math SBAC in all grades 3 through 6. While there was a slight decrease, very slight, in proficiency levels for grades 4 and 6, not through 6, it is reassuring to know that there is intentional monitoring happening at all of the levels, as Dr. Daniels and Mr. Traverso kind of mentioned. So to grow as an institution, we take the overall scores and we drill down to look for specific areas of growth and non-growth at the grade level, at the classroom, and at the individual level. This helps us to focus and progress monitoring on an individual level. So it's heartwarming. It's heartening to see that this trend is helping us to beat the pre-pandemic growth, and it's very exciting to be closing those gaps.
The next few slides will highlight some of the growth that we're seeing from specific groups of students, drilling down, as Dr. Diorio just mentioned. So this slide shows the 3-year achievement of a specific group of students, our current Stratford Public Schools 7th graders. As you can see, as a cohort, they've made significant gains in both ELA and maintained incremental growth year over year in mathematics during their time with us in their 4th, 5th, and 6th grade years. Our next 2 slides are going to highlight some of the gains we've seen specifically over the last 3 years from our high-needs students, which includes our multilingual learners as well as our students with exceptionalities. As you can see on this slide presenting the ELA data, and as you'll see on the next slide presenting the math data, what we're most excited about in this growth is that particularly in math, as you'll see on the next slide, Students are moving up amongst the proficiency levels. For example, a student who may have scored a 2, a level 2, which would have been that yellow band in 2021, has moved up to perhaps a level 3 in 2022, that green band. As you can see, over the past 3 years in both ELA and in math, we've increased the percentage of high needs students in each of those yellow, green, and blue areas, students scoring 2, 3, and 4 on the Smarter Balance assessment. And we've also decreased the percentage of students each year in that red band on that level 1 level of proficiency. We as educators expect growth from all of our students, including our high needs students. And as you can see, we're thrilled to be seeing this positive movement amongst those students. This is a testament to the work not only of our teachers to differentiate and meet the needs of all of our unique learners, but making sure that we're connecting with and supporting every student that walks through our doors.
Finally, here we see again the annual growth on the grade 5 NGSS for each of the past 2 years since 2021. We attribute this to the consistency in utilizing the mystery science resource and our NGSS teaching practices, as well as our partnership with the Audubon for field experience opportunities in the primary grades, which help move these students when they get to the 5th grade NGSS assessment. We're going to move on to Sam Rosenberg and the middle school. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to present tonight. Greg Regas, the principal at Flood, and together with Ms. Fonseca and Ms. Rosenberg, we're going to talk to you a little bit about the middle schools. As has been well documented in past meetings here at the board, the middle level presents its own unique set of challenges. That would help. And our achievement data, as well as middle school data from both state and national levels, represents those challenges. As you can see here, our children's achievement in 7th grade in ELA has unfortunately been trending a bit downward the past 3 years. And in 8th grade, we had an uptick in 21-22, and then a decrease last year in 22-23. We're hoping to build on the performance at the elementary schools as they enter the middle levels in both ELA and math, and we hope to see some of those successes translated over to the middle level in the coming years. I'm going to now turn it over to Ms. Fonseca, who's going to talk about our math scores.
Thank you to the distinguished members of the board. As you can see, there definitely has been an upward trend over the past few years in our math data. You can see school year 2023 saw a considerable increase over the previous year, and that can be attributed to our math curriculum, in addition to our new math interventionists, Danielle Taylor and Matt Damone, who were afforded the opportunity. Amazing teachers, and they were afforded the opportunity to come work with us through the Alliance grant. And as my colleagues already have stated, we look forward to the work that has been done in the elementaries and coming up to see the achievement in our middle school. So I'm going to hand it over to Mrs. Rosenberg.
So here are 8th graders performing in next-gen science standards similar to the 5th grade. We're looking at an increase from 2021 to 21-22. We've had a slight dip in 2022-2023, but I do want to stress that for this particular class of 8th graders, this is the first time they have taken the assessment. Unlike the other cohorts, the 5th graders typically are the first time they're exposed to that particular test. So kudos to our students for maintaining pretty much a typical performance standard for having been exposed for the first time to this assessment. I also like to shout out to that the science teachers in the middle schools have stayed very consistent with our Open SciEd resource program and applying those practices as well. So at this moment in time, I'm going to pass it over to our high school colleagues. Come on down.
So I'm just going to introduce the high school team. I'm Joanna Najarian-Garb, the supervisor of 504 School Counseling and Assessment. And with me is Jack Delapiano, who's the principal at Stratford High, Katie Graff, who is the principal at Bunnell, and Denise Massari, who is the supervisor of dual language, ESOL, and world language.
Thank you, Joanna. Hold on one second here. We were just commenting on our coordination of colors tonight. We try to do this quite often. I want to say it's truly an honor to be here tonight presenting the data on behalf of our high schools for you. As you can see, in 2023, 11th grade students in Stratford saw an average increase of 24 points on the school day SAT. Two things make this gain even more impressive. The first is that 47 more students had access last year to take the SAT than the previous year. And over that same time frame, students across Connecticut saw an average decrease of 11 points on the school day SAT. The reason we point that out is because we made up a 35-point gain over our scores compared to Connecticut from just a year ago. So what that means is Stratford High School and Bunnell High School did a wonderful job at not only closing the achievement gap in Stratford, but also at the state level. We would like to thank all of you, Dr. Sunday, Dr. Daniels, the Board of Education, for your continued support of the high schools in Stratford. The ability to run SAT prep classes, both after school and on Saturdays, as well as AP prep courses, have shown an increase in what our students can demonstrate to us. You're going to learn about that from Dr. Graff in just a few minutes. I also want to commend the teachers at the high school levels, both Stratford and Bunnell. They showed an unwavering commitment to incorporating both SAT and AP style questions into their lessons on a daily basis. They collaborated around student data, about student performance, and we had honest conversations about how we move people forward. Most importantly, they showed they're committed to teaching and learning, and for that, we thank them. Thank you very much to all the teachers here. At this time, please help me welcome Dr. Graff. She's going to disaggregate the data just a little more for you. Dr. Graff?
Thank you, Mr. Delapiano. I'm sorry I missed the beginning of this meeting, but I heard my dear friend, Mr. Tato, did an amazing job, as did Barron, so thank you for that. While we are super proud of the overall growth that we saw in the SAT, we are even more proud of the growth that we saw within various subgroups. Overall, the percentage of students who score proficient or higher in the ABRW increased by 4.1%, but this is where it gets really exciting. With regard to students who meet the high needs subgroup, this is students who receive free or reduced lunch, students with disabilities, and our English language learners. The percentage of high needs students who scored proficient or higher increased by 10.7%. It gets better. The percentage of Black and African American students who scored proficient or higher increased by 10.8%. And the percentage of Hispanic students who scored proficient or higher on the EBRW increased by 4.5%. Thank you. In math, we saw an overall 6.9% increase in students who scored proficient or higher. With regard to our high needs students, the percentage of high needs students who score proficient or higher increased by 9.6% in math. The percentage of Black and African American students who score proficient or higher in math increased by 12.7%. And the percentage of Hispanic students who scored proficient or higher on the math was 10.5% increase. Again, to echo the sentiments of my colleague, Mr. Delapiano, we attribute this growth across both areas and all of these subgroups to the hard work, dedication, and commitment of our teachers at both Stratford High School and Bunnell, and the belief that all students can achieve. Thank you.
So continuing the trend, we not only increased as a district, but our subgroups continue to increase in science. So our high needs group increased by 7.1% from the previous year. Our Black and African American students increased by 3.5%, and our Hispanic students increased by 9% over the previous year on the NGSS. And like my colleague said, lots of work on the part of the science teachers to make this a reality. On AP performance, we are continuing our trends. So we increased the number of students who are actually taking the AP exams, and we increased the percentage of students who were scoring a 3 or higher. That means more students are gaining the opportunity after high school to potentially earn college credit. And again, our teachers are working incredibly hard in the AP classes to give students the opportunity to score a 3, 4, or 5 on the AP exam. Some students, just so you know, do opt to take the dual enrollment credit instead of going into the AP test, because if they do well in the class, they get the grade and they don't have to take an exam. So, you know, some of our numbers reflect not every student is choosing to take the AP exam, but those who are continue to do better. I'm going to pass it to Denise.
Hello, good evening. Earning the seal of biliteracy is really quite an accomplishment. It shows that a student is bilingual and biliterate in at least 2 languages. And it is an extensive exam. It can last anywhere from 3 to 5 hours. And it's voluntary on top of that. So you can imagine putting yourself through that. And while that percentage might seem small, I think it's important to note because it celebrates the linguistic diversity that we have here in Stratford. And it also demonstrates that more of our students are participating and are successful. So kudos to them, big shout out to them for participating and undergoing such a difficult and grueling exam to earn such an honorary seal. It also shows that we are better positioning our students to participate in a global and ever-changing world. And so I thank you, board members, Dr. Sunday, and my colleagues for supporting our students to be able to participate in this. Thank you. I will pass that on back to you.
So additional measures of post-secondary readiness includes our arts access, our PE and physical fitness, and our college and career readiness. So in terms of the arts access, we did increase our access at the high school level by almost 6% this year. We brought back a music technology class. We increased our capacity to have more students in piano and guitar, and we continue to look at ways to have students to have access for both music and the arts. In PE, we did see a slight decrease. It is the first year that we've had an online system. The state has rolled that out for inputting scores in terms of sit and reach and pacer, the mile, looking at students' just overall physical fitness in a variety of categories. And we have the opportunity to continue the work, the PE teachers, the athletic directors, working together to see how can we help students achieve the level of fitness that will be really helpful to them after they leave our schools. In terms of college and career readiness, we continue to increase the number of students who are taking courses. So these are CTE courses, these are AP courses, these are dual enrollment courses. And you can see we are above our pre-pandemic levels. We have 97% of students who have access and the opportunity to take the courses. And we are continuing to increase how students are doing on those exams if they take it with AP, dual enrollment, and SAT, so that they earn credits as a result of taking those classes. I'm going to pass it back to Dr. Daniels.
So Mr. Traverso started us off with, where are we now? What we see is evidence of growth, lots of growth in many spaces. We also see that there's opportunity for even more growth to happen. We know that there are some areas that we intend to focus on this year and invest a lot of our time, resources, and supports, particularly in the chronic absenteeism and our middle school, to ensure that our students are successfully prepared for their high school transition. But the next part of this is, where are we going and how do we get there? And to move us forward this evening and close out our presentation, I wanted to provide you with the summary of how we plan to obtain some growth this year, again, continuing the growth that we've made already. And we have 3 areas that we plan to focus on. So one is continuing with the cross-strategy collaboration. Our schools have already begun to take the NWEA assessment, which allows our teachers to understand what's called the zone of proximity. And that is essentially where our students can go, and it allows us to plan instruction using that data to support our students. But it also allows us to determine what students can be placed in enrichment opportunities, talented opportunities. It allows us to determine what students might need multi-tiered system of supports, interventions, and particularly to bring them back onto grade level. We also are going to continue the work with regards to restorative practices and using our code of conduct to ensure that our environment is one in which allows learning to happen in all of our classrooms. And then also we are working with the additional resources from the Alliance Grant to focus intentionally on chronic absenteeism and how do we support our schools and our families and our students with engagement. And particularly I want to shout out Ms. Temple and Ms. Redding for their significant work this past year and the work they've started already. Because it was only a few weeks ago that we had this very long line going all around Stratford High School to bring our parents right here. And that was our first approach for the 2023-2024 school year to really partner with our families. In addition to that, we're going to continue to monitor for support. We know that we are refining our curriculum. We think about the K-3 science of reading. We're talking about looking at what we call a year-long context, looking at standards and ensuring that every classroom, our teachers are measuring learning and delivering instruction that's aligned to our standards that are grade level. We are also, again, as I mentioned earlier, middle school supports and continuing with expansion of the intervention works because we've seen the growth. We know that when we have our interventionists in our space, we will see growth. And so we plan to continue that work. And again, continuing the data analysis at the classroom, grade level, department, and school level. That's key, is that we sit down and we reflect on where students are and we map out a plan to move them forward. And so we continue to do that, and we'll continue to also have our professional learning communities. We are very thankful for the professional learning communities because we're able to use data and provide space for our teaching staff to really develop and grow and practice. And lastly, this year, we're going to continue our focus on the development of assessments to measure student learning, how to give feedback from those assessments, designing independent learning activities, and culturally and linguistically responsive classrooms. These 3 areas are part of what we call our high quality instruction attributes, and that will be our focus for this academic year. I want to again thank everyone and credit our growth to our teaching staff, to our administrators who led our teachers this past year, and yes, the board, the students, and the parents. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We are incredibly proud for everything that has happened over the last year. We're humbled to recognize that we have experienced an incredible amount of growth, and as you've seen in some areas, some explosive growth. We are humble and appreciative to also recognize that our subgroups are in so many different ways closing the opportunity gap and narrowing the achievement gap. This is important for our scholars because it becomes more than just what happens in school. These things can have life implications. But we also know that there's an incredible amount more work to do. So we're going to get back to what we do here at the Stratford Public Schools, which is just good old-fashioned blue-collar work. Our teachers are incredible. You know how much they care about your students. And we're going to ask our kids to continue to step up to the plate, okay? We always say, you've shown us you can do it once, we expect you to do it again. So that's the plan, and we're going to lean on your partnership, okay? There's no way we get these things done and continue to grow and move the district forward without you as parents and without you as community members. So thank you for your care and your support for the Stratford Public Schools. Let's have an outstanding year.